Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my live streams. This, I think, is going to be a
Reggie
pretty
here,
cool
your
live
friendly
stream.
neighborhood bodybuilder and comic
We
book
may need to
collector.
put you on mute over there.
Another.
So this is going to be a fun live stream. And it's going to be fun because I am joined by an owner of an LCS that I've been going to, I think, for the last 2 years or so. Juan, thank you for agreeing to be on the channel. It is good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, man. This should be fun.
It should be. It should be fun and hopefully entertaining as well. But probably for the last maybe 6 months kept saying to Juan, I want to get you on the channel. Juan, I want to get you on the channel. And it was my own laziness why it didn't happen sooner. But today we are going to do it. And again, I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. Juan, do you want to shout out the name of your shop so that people know where you are and the name of the shop?
The name of the store is Comic and Figure Addicts. We're in Union City, California. Probably the best selection of comics and toys in the Bay Area. So if you guys are ever in the area, come on by.
And that is not an understatement. I actually did a video in Juan's shop where I actually walked around with a camera, shot some footage, and person after person kept saying, that store is incredible. If I lived in that area, he would have all my money. And in fact, Juan, I am sending you a guy. There's a guy from Switzerland that reached out to me today and he said he is coming to the Bay Area. He's going to go to LA and a couple of other places. He's like, where should I go? I was like, you should go to Comic Figures Addicts because that is the place that you want to go. So if a guy comes in from Switzerland with an accent, I sent him to you. All right. All right. So let me say some quick hellos to people here in the chat. We have had a nice little influx of folks here. So Brandon Stokely is here. Wolf Mode 88 is here. Wolf Mode actually bought an Amazing Spider-Man 131 for me, and it arrived earlier today. So you are very welcome for that, my friend. Perry Comics is in the house. Chris Barrett is here. Tina is in the house. It is always good to see you, my friend. Who else is here? Eric Press. Marvel Joe is in the house shouting out 1G. Wilson Ramos is here. Carlos Diaz is in the house. L. Smith. Thierry is always here. Jeremiah is here, brother. Thank you very much. And James McDowell. Logan. Bama Links is in the house. And the almighty Liger King. It is good to see each and every one of you. And I just saw Sully to Kings flow in a hot second ago. So thank you guys for taking time out of your day to be here with us today. And if you are watching this now or on replay and you are not yet a subscriber to the channel, I definitely want to encourage you to do so that you can stay abreast of all the content that I release on a weekly basis. So what is the point of this live stream? We have for months and months and months been having conversations about the comic book market and the possibility of a crash. We've had discussions around variants and how variants remind people of the 90s and the crash that occurred. We have anecdotal conversations around comic shops going out of business and how that is a sign that the comic book market is going to crash. We could continue having these type of conversations because one, they're fun, right? They're fun to have. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to have an influx of actual information from someone that is actually in the comic book industry, someone that owns a shop, that runs a shop, runs a really successful shop. And that is why Juan is here. He is here to give us a little bit of insight into what it takes to run a shop and also what he sees as an insider in the industry. So Juan, that is an incredibly big setup, my friend. I hope that you can deliver on everything that I just said.
I hope so too, man. You just made me bigger than life.
That is my job, my friend. That is my job. So, Juan, I tried to give a little bit of background on you during my preview show on Sunday, and I probably didn't do you justice. So I want to spend the first part of this conversation giving people a little bit of context for who you are. So one of the first questions that I have for you is a very basic one around how long have you owned and operated your shop?
So we opened back in 2011. Actually, I didn't pick it out, but our anniversary is November 5th. And you know what November 5th is? Remember, the 5th of November. So it just coincided that I picked that, and V for Vendetta and all that. I've always been a comic book fan. I've always loved toys. I always loved those things. So in the back of my mind, I always wanted to have a store of my own, and it was always going to be one of those things that later in life, closer to retirement, something like that, I'll do it as a hobby. Circumstances changed, and I said, screw it. Why not now?
There you go. There you go. So, I mean, do you consider yourself more of, and we've had conversations, so I'm drawing from those previous conversations, not just from what you've said here. Do you consider yourself more of a comic collector or of a toy collector, or is it just a blend of the two at this point?
What started it off was comics. Obviously, as a kid, I had toys. But comics is what gave me the backstories. With toys, as a little kid, you make up your own stories, make up your own stuff.
Even if it doesn't make sense, you just
you don't know a backstory, so you just especially with stuff like Star Wars. I was really big in Star Wars growing up. So I knew what I knew from the movies, but like some obscure character that had like 2 seconds of screen time, you don't know. Like Boba Fett, you don't know his history, so you make it up. But comics is And my dad was into comics. He read Conan, he loved his Conan, his Frazetta covers and stuff like that. So he would take me to the comic store, and I would pick up comics. And I, genuinely loved Marvel. I've always been a Marvel head. And Spider-Man. Spider-Man's always been my favorite character. So I just gravitated towards them and just picked it up from there. And that filled in the holes, in the stories and, the backgrounds of each character. And comics come out, well, at least back then, comics came out way more often than toys did.
Yep.
So comics, filled that, hole for me of entertainment. So I've always been a comic guy, but I love me some toys.
So did you ever work in a shop, right? Because you said you maybe later in life you would do it as closer to retirement, etc. Did you ever like work in a shop, or did you go right from being like a comic collector, toy collector, right into being a shop owner?
Ironically, I never worked at a comic store. I've worked at toy stores. My first job out of high school, I worked at Target because, again, I was a toy collector. So
Yep.
Work somewhere where, hey, I make money, but I also get first dibs off stuff.
So here's the thing. This is why your exclusive toys at Target never made it to the shop, to the floor, because Juan was in the back room.
Hey, this was back in 98, 99. So I can't get blamed for stuff now.
I'm teasing.
But hey, you know what? I've always seen it. Even now I go like, it's a perk of the job. It's a perk of the job. It's like, even now, perk of the job. I bought the Amazing Fantasy. Do you see it in my store? No, that thing's at home with me. I sleep with it every night on my chest. It's a perk of the job.
I respect that, brother. I respect it. So you worked in some toy stores, never at a comic shop, and you became an owner.
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't know if you ever went to a store in Dublin called Comic Inc.
Mm-mm.
So it's in Comic Inc. It's over by the Hooters, or it was by the Hooters. Now it's long gone. But I started going there maybe in the mid 2000s.
Okay.
And I only went there because my friend would go to that store. It was kind of like my store where it had a lot of action figures.
Yep.
And one of my friends at that time would go to the store and trade for Marvel Legends that he wanted. And he would come and tell me, hey, man, do you think this trade is fair? And I'd be like, no, I think it's a little bit lopsided. I think you're losing out. Oh, you need to come with me. You need to come with me. So he would take me as a negotiation person. Like, I'd be browsing in the store, looking at stuff, and he'd be dealing, and then he'd come over to me and be like, hey, did you eavesdrop?
Yeah.
And I'll be like, no, you should ask for this. You should ask for that. And then one day the owner, Lenny, called me over. He's like, you come over here. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, am I in trouble or something? He's like,
you're jacking up his deals, man.
He's like, no, I just want to shake your hand because you get how to negotiate. You get that, it has to be an even thing, or the shop has to win a little bit.
Yeah, which is true.
yeah, they have to make their money. So you don't go out there, cutthroat looking to get one over. You actually negotiate for something that's fair and ideal for both of us. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. And I just got to know him over the years, and I started making that my comic store. There's a whole bunch of them here in Fremont that are 5 minutes from where I am.
Yep.
But I would trek over there every Wednesday, in traffic all the way to Dublin.
Wow.
It just felt like home. We always called it like the Cheers of the comic book industry. Everybody would go over there. We'd meet up after work. We would talk. The store would close. We would stay there talking, an hour or two. Sometimes Lenny, the owner, would want to go home, and we'd stay another hour just in the parking lot talking. Wow. We'd go to eat. We became really good friends. We became a family. So on days like Free Comic Book Day or days that he had sales, I would go in there and I would hang out and, just talk with them and stuff like that. When I would go to Comic-Con, when I went toy hunting, I would bring him stuff that he would ask. He's like, oh, Juan, so-and-so is asking for this new figure that came out. Keep an eye out. I'd buy it up. I'd take it to the store. I'd give it to him, stuff like that. He gave me a little corner where I could sell stuff, and that's where I kind of started selling things.
That's cool.
Yeah. So we became really good friends, and little by little, he would call me and be like, hey, Marvel's doing this offer. What do you think of it? Oh, DC's offering this. What do you think of it? Oh, Diamond has their holiday clearance thing. This is what I've ordered. Can you run through it? And it, it boosted my ego that like someone that had a shop was kind of relying on me that was a nobody.
Yep.
And my opinion mattered.
Yep.
So it was stuff like that, when Blackest Night came out and they were doing the rings, he didn't want to get them because DC was asking, 25 copies of a book that he only ordered like 4 copies of. But I'm like, look, Lenny, you get all these rings with them, you sell the rings. People are going to want the rings because it's the first time they had all the different color rings. Like, you make it where you get the ring for free if you buy the comic, or you sell the, ring for $1. Either way, you're making a profit.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, wow. And later on it worked out. With the Campbell Siege cover, he's like, hey, we should get some, right? I'm like, yeah, we need to get some. And we ended up with like 5 or 6 copies of those. And it was just stuff like that that cover, the Ollie G cover.
If you don't know that cover, here it is.
And it was just stuff like that it gave me confidence that like, okay, he's bouncing this stuff off of me. And I always told him like, oh, I want to own a shop one day. So like when I would go in there, he would sit me down and be like, look, this is how I'm doing my orders.
That's awesome.
I do my business. This is how I do this. And I would ask him questions. I'm like, well, why do you do that? Like, why do you do this? And he's like, and he just went step by step. And it just, Rolodex and put it in the back of my head. Rolodex, put it in the back of my head. I'm like, if I ever have my store, then this,
Yep.
And I would always go into stores and be like, oh, I like that idea of that store. I like that idea. Oh, I don't like that, so stay away from that.
Yep.
And kept building it. And even now I still go to stores whenever I'm in a new area and I just check it out and be like, hey, that works. I need to seal that idea, and stuff like that. And it just kind of went from there. And, he ended up selling the store to someone else who kind of ran it into the ground, unfortunately, because I kind of wanted to buy that store. I wanted to buy his inventory because he had already been around and established. He already had a clientele.
Yep.
I would have kept the name. I would have probably moved the business because I think they were going to raise his rent. But I would have kept it in Dublin. I mean, hell, already having clientele, that's guaranteed money.
Right.
But he ended up selling it to someone else, which at the end of the day, I'm thankful because then I started this from scratch. No one can say, well, you piggybacked off me. You have half of what you have because you started from me.
Right.
No one can say that. Everything that I've done here, I've earned it on my own and haven't been piggybacked off anyone else.
What do you think sets your shop apart from some of the others, right? Because you go to a lot of these shops, you know the owners, you're friends with many of the owners, right? But what is it that you believe sets your shop apart from the others? And this is not intended to bash any other shop. That's not what this is about. It's really about what makes your shop special and unique in your mind.
I mean, you can attest to this, the variety.
Yep.
You come in here. I mean, I'm sure you come here like what, every 2 weeks or so to
Something like that.
books, and I'm sure there's stuff in here that you've missed. You know,
I've shot footage in there, and there's stuff that people are like, "What about this? What about that?" I'm like, "I didn't even see that," and I shot footage.
Yeah, and you're here regularly, and that's the thing. You come in here, and whether it's toys or hot toys or statues or pops or comics and stuff like that, we have a good amount of diversity in all that stuff.
Yep.
So even if someone just comes in here and says, "Oh, I have to go to a kid's birthday party," and they like Marvel, all right, well, we got, stuff from $2 up to like $200.
Yep.
How much do you love this kid? And it's toys, it's plushies, it's comics, it's all this stuff. It's a wide variety.
Yep.
As opposed to, you might go to other comic stores which are 90% comic books and maybe a corner of some toys and other collectibles here and there, or this comic store is mostly playing cards,
Yep.
Pokemon cards and stuff like that.
So
That's
the diversification of the inventory and offering that is part of the success.
Each store has their niche and what works. Like, one thing that I've always kind of wanted to, but I was never into, was stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon and Magic.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you kind of don't see any of that stuff in my store, because I was never into those card games. I don't know jack squat about it. Someone can come in with a collection and be like, "This card's worth $500," and I'll be like, "Oh, okay,
Not my thing."
But it's not my thing. I wouldn't give you $1 for it.
Yep. So we've had a nice little influx of people here that have come into the chat. And what we're doing is we are having a conversation with Juan, who is a shop owner in the Union City area of San Francisco. He has been in business since 2011. And we're having just a conversation with him about like how he got started, what gave him the confidence to go into being a local comic shop owner. And then we're going to kind of transition into having this conversation around the overall comic market and whether from his vantage point, he actually sees if we are headed towards a cliff, or whether there are some other things afoot in the comic book market. And we've batted this topic around numerous times in multiple videos, multiple chats, but we've invited Juan on to kind of give us an insider's perspective and point of view. So with that, I want to transition a little bit to start talking about the comic book market. And I want to ask a very direct question. What is your general feeling about the comic book market? Do you think we are headed towards a comic book crash?
A crash? I wouldn't say necessarily a crash, but we are definitely fatiguing at the moment. In my opinion, and I'd say right now it's more Marvel than anything else. The variant covers are just way too much.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No, I cut you off. I apologize, please.
I mean, War of the Realms that came out issue 1, I mean, it had like so many damn covers. I mean, do we really need that many covers? Like 1 or 2, and that's not going into like the 1 out of 50, 1 out of hundreds or whatever. It's just way too many covers.
Yep.
And I mean, as much as I love certain artists and all that, now artists are getting into it and doing their own covers and stuff like that. To me, it's just too much.
So here, let me back up just a quick question before we go down that path. Someone, Eric Press, is asking a question of whether you started with a bunch of backstop or whether you started your shop with your own personal collection.
I had some stuff that I started with myself. I went through my toys and stuff. I don't think I got rid of any of my comic collection per se. But maybe a year and a half before I opened, I went on a buying binge. I was buying collections and throwing them in my garage. It literally looked like an episode of Hoarders in there, because it was pictures from Borders, it was pictures from Toys R Us, it was collections of comics, collections of toys. just everything just rammed into my into my uh, into my garage until one day I just kind of went out there and I looked and I'm like,
I think I'm ready.
I think I got enough crap, so I need to now find a place to put it all in. And that's when I started looking for a place to move in.
That's a good question. Eric Press, thank you for asking that question, because I think it was a really good one that I missed. So I think that's a great thing. So what I heard you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you don't necessarily see a crash per se, but I like to phrase it as maybe a market correction, right? Would you agree? Would you agree with that? Would you use those words, or would you use different words to really describe what you anticipate? Because I think you used the word fatigue as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that though?
I just think there's way, back in the 90s, we had the outrageous print runs,
Yep. 48 million in a month.
Yeah, way too high. And it's like, now we don't have a single issue per se with a cover that has that print run. But when you have one issue that has 20 different covers,
Yep.
it adds up.
Yep.
You might not be printing that one cover, 500,000 times. But, adding, Detected 1000 had how many different covers?
83, 84.
Yeah.
And that's not even the most.
Exactly. So it's stuff like that. It's way too much for me. It's just like, like I said, it's fatigue, because you just go, wow, I really like this book. I really like this artist, but I really like this artist, and I really like this artist. Instead, it's one of those things like when Marvel started using Alex Ross for monthly books, it kind of loses any meaning to it. Because now every month I see an Alex Ross cover, and it could be a meaningless cover. And it's like, I remember when Alex Ross doing a cover meant something.
Yep. It was a special thing. It was a special event.
Or an anniversary issue, or meant something. Now you just have a million different artists doing a million different covers at one time, and it's just way too much.
Yep. So let me ask a couple of additional questions. When you talk about the fatigue, what I'm hearing you say is that fatigue may be more around new comics versus old comics. Is that fair to say?
The old stuff is never gonna be hurt by anything going on by new releases. What's gonna hurt is new releases, anything new. The market now. The old stuff is always going to be cherished. It's always going to be collectible. It's going to continue to go up on price. Nothing's ever going to hurt those those prices, or the people, the sentiment that people have towards those books. Nothing's going to change that.
And one of the things that I've spoken about, and I'll try to put a link up to it if I remember, is that I've in my mind, I've kind of parsed the comic book market out into segments, right? Because I think that people look at the comic book market as a single thing. And in my mind, I think it's multiple things, right? Like you can say the stock market, but the stock market is many things. It's not just one thing. And in my mind, I think that there are new comics, there are old comics, there are golden age comics, there is original art. Like there are segments to the market. And I think people look at it as this one homogenous thing. And I don't know if that's accurate. And what I've heard you say is that it's not just one thing. It might be at least two things from what I'm hearing, but I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
First, before I answer that, I saw that Steve Hodges was asking a question of how do I handle bad months? Well, I haven't really had a bad month in a long time, but usually what I try to do is have a convention or a toy show or something at least once a month, because that's always a nice little influx of money coming in. So that's another question that I do that I think other shops might not do as often. Is I do a lot of shows. That's a lot of supplemental money that comes in, to quote unquote keep the lights on.
Yep. That's a good question. I'm glad you were able to see that question, because I did not see that one.
So going back to, what was your question again?
It was really around the fact that there may actually be multiple markets and not just a single market, right? In my mind, I see new comics, and you can break down old comics into multiple segments, but there's new comics, there's old comics, there's original art, there's multiple segments, not just one. Would you agree with that? Or what's your thought?
Just off my customer bases, I have people that have been collecting for the longest time, that you see that they've been into, whether they're 20 years old or 50 years old, they've been collecting comics for a while, and they buy what they like, what they want, regardless of whatever the hype is on the book.
Yep.
Then I have customers that come in here that only come in because they hear of a certain thing. Like, what's the book? War of the Realms, Agents of Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
I think I talked to you about the other day. I ordered like 2 or 3 copies because I wasn't expecting that book to sell out or anybody really care. But now that it's a first appearance of the first, Filipina superhero, everybody wants it now. It's
Filipino or not, they all want it.
Yeah, well, it's a first appearance. I mean, the same thing with the Naomi books. Up until like 2 weeks ago, I couldn't give that stuff away.
Yep.
I had sold like maybe 1 or 2 copies of each, and then boom, like in a week, everybody wants it.
Yeah.
I'm a shoe guy. I'm a sneakerhead too, and we call
how many
them
vices do you have, bro?
we call them hype beasts, and that's what they are. They're hype beasts. People that now see that there's money to be made. They don't know crap about comics, but they get to download that this book is going to be worth something or is on the rise, and they'll go buy out a store, but they couldn't tell you, a thing about the character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then there's also now the guys that come in here and buy just cover art.
Yep. Yeah.
They only come in here and buy Art Germ covers or Matina covers or, whatever artist, Delato covers. And so, yeah, there's different customer bases when it comes down to it.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm guessing those customer bases may cross over. Sometimes not at all, right? You have new guys that buy new books. You have guys that buy old books. Sometimes they cross. But then with your diverse store, you also have people that buy toys, that buy pops, that buy,
Right.
I mean, you have some diversification. And to the point about a bad month for comics doesn't necessarily equal a bad month for Juan because of how you've set your shop up, at least from my vantage point.
Pretty much, yeah. Hold on. I saw a question real quick. As a store owner, how long until you sell Naomi above cover?
I told you that question was going to come up. So here, let me give backstory for some people. This is like a general setup, not necessarily about that situation per se, but there are a lot of people right now that are upset that went to their shops on Wednesday for new books and were not able to find new books, but then saw that their shop had put those new books online at a marked up price. They were never offered to the shop goers, but they were put online at a higher rate. And so people are kind of upset about that. So I don't know if you've heard about that, but I'm curious what your thoughts are around that topic.
I'm of 2 mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
As a collector, I would be pissed off.
Yep.
Especially if that's a book that I genuinely like and bought because I liked it and not because I'm buying it for profit. I'd be pissed off. As a store owner, I go, it's not a business practice I would do. But I mean, it's like varying covers. Like there's no determining price. I throw that price on a variant of what I think it's worth. So I don't know. It's a tough question.
It is a tough one
because, like I said, as a collector, I would be pissed off, but I'm also of the mentality of you do you, boo. Like, if that works for you, if that was my store, I would obviously not go that day up. Now, here's my question. Do those stores do standing orders? And if they're customers that have a standing order have that book, did they get it for cover price?
So again, this is all unsubstantiated rumor. It is anecdotal. Basically, what happened was new book came out. Nobody got the new book.
Because I would at least try to take care of my regulars, my standing orders. Yep. I'd be like, oh, Regie has this book on his list. I make sure that he has it. He's getting it for cover price.
Yep.
And then maybe just pull the ones that I had on my shelf for, first come, first serve.
Do you put limits in place for some of the hot books too? I can't remember if you do like that one per customer thing.
I do. I've never really had to, there's only been like maybe 1 or 2 times that I've had to like stop someone from literally taking a whole stack of books. But I try to. I try to be like, hey, you know, if there's 2 different covers, fine, you can take one of each.
Yep.
But you're not taking a whole stack of whatever book it is that I have that, you know, is the hotness right now.
Right. So let me ask you this. You started talking a little bit about the variants and how the variants were too many. And I think you specifically called out Marvel. And in fact, I actually did a video on this where I was like, it was an open letter to Marvel. Talk to me about the difference that you see in variants between Marvel and DC, because I think they have 2 different philosophical approaches to how they handle variants. And I'm curious from your vantage point as an LCS owner, how you see it.
Well, what I like about DC is that they've kind of eliminated the variants per se. Because, you know, before variants was like, all right, well, a 1 out of 10, a 1 out of 25, a 1 out of 50, a 1 out of 100. They've kind of done away with all of that. Now, rarely now does DC have, if it's like a major crossover or something like that, they'll have like maybe a 1 out of 25, a 1 out of 50. But for like their regular monthly books, they have an A cover and a B cover. And the B, of course, obviously is labeled as a variant. And it's, you know, and it's the one that has like very little, banners or anything. It's mostly just the cover art, like almost a virgin cover.
Yep.
And I like that because it features, you know, new artists and stuff like that. And the covers are usually pretty good. And it's an open order. So that means I could order 1 of cover A and, you know, 1,000 of cover B if I wanted to, if it's an art germ cover. You know, for example, the Catwoman, Stanley Lau's been doing a lot of the variants, the B covers for Catwoman. A really popular one. So I'll order like 2 of the regular, and then I'll order like 10, 15 of the art germs because people pick it up just because it's art germ.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, you know, I don't have to hit any goals. With Marvel, on the other hand, they still do the 1 out of 10s, 1 out of 25s and all that. But then they have it like, well, if you want the Scotty Young cover, if you want the baby cover, well, then you have to hit 150% of the order for this random cover or this random comic. So like if it's, let's take example, War of the Realms. If I wanted the Scotty Young cover, then, you know, whatever you ordered Thor 8 or whatever 4 months ago, you have to order 150% of that. So if I order 10, I have to order 15 to qualify for the Scotty Young.
Yep. And
to me, it's kind of it's honestly padding your numbers because people are going to want the Scotty Young covers because they're popular. You know, I'm going to want to have a certain cover or certain things, and it's pumping up their numbers. In the last couple of months, they've kind of changed it a little bit now where all the covers that are open order qualify you towards those books. So before it was just cover A, you have to order X amount to qualify. But now if there's like 2 or 3 covers that are all open orders, you could piggyback off each one to hit that qualifier. But there's no reason a book has to have 5 or 6 different variant covers.
Agreed. Yeah.
Especially if it's a monthly regular, you know, run-of-the-mill book.
Yep. I think someone else basically said that if like, I think someone said like Batman 1000 was a special event, right? So do variants from that. But if it's like, you know, Batman 999, right, and nothing happens, then why should it have 20 different covers, right? Which is just ridiculous. But what I was hearing from you is that it sounds like they're starting to remove some of the restrictions and lighten the load a little bit on the Marvel side. Is that what I was hearing there?
A little bit. Like I said, now any cover that's open order helps you get to that tier. So what's a good Symbiote Spider-Man that came out last week. I really wanted the McFarlane whatever variant cover that it was called. Because it's, I don't know if you've seen it. I have the poster on the door, the one where he's kind of in the sewers. He has the black suit behind him, kind of crucified.
I'll see it tomorrow when I come in, though.
I had that poster as a child, and they made a cover for that, and I'm like, I need to have that cover. Yep. And it was like a 1 out of 100 to qualify. And before, you would have to order 100 of the A cover to qualify for that one. But for this one, it was spread across the A cover, the Art Germ cover, and like one or two other covers. So between me and two other comic stores, we pulled all our orders together so that I could get the McFarlane one. And then, like, you know, we spread it all around everything else.
That's cool.
And that's another thing. There's always meat on the bones, and I have no problem helping other comic stores. You know, if they need a variant and, you know, they need some of my books to hit that number, I'll gladly give it to them. Let them order my books so that they get the variant for whoever it is that wanted that variant.
Mm-hmm.
I just think a lot of people think that it's really cutthroat.
Let me ask you this. How much of the variant chase and the need to order whatever percent more than what you ordered before, how much of that do you think contributes to shops potentially going out of business? Because there's a lot of people that basically say the variants are too much for the consumer because there's too many options. But then people also say that the variants are too much for the local shop owner because they are taking on more debt than what they actually need to take on because they're trying to get that hot cover. What are your thoughts about that?
It is. It could get you into a big giant hole. Because, like, let's say, you know, a random Marvel book that I only order 10 copies a month, let's say. There's a variant that I want that's 1 out of 25, which is probably the lowest tiered variant that Marvel has usually. All right, I'm ordering 15 copies that I wouldn't have otherwise to get one book. So that one book, I better sell it to at least cover those other 15, and that's just me breaking even.
Yep.
So now, you know, like I said, I have the option that I work with other stores where I go, hey man, I want this 1 out of 25 for you know, Reggie asked me he wants his variant. You know, how many are you ordering? Oh, you're ordering 10? All right, well, your 10 and my 10, that's 20. Hey, other comic store.
Well, you get 5.
You know, how many are you ordering? Yep. Oh, you're ordering 10? Can I get those 5 so I could do this?
Yep.
And it works out because I'm not having to go out of my comfort zone.
Yep.
But I actually, the store that I used to go to in comic-making, when the new owner took over, that's one of the things that kind of, you know, made him fall under, I heard, was that he was, you know, people would go in there and be like, I want this 1 out of 100 cover. And he would order it and get it for him. And I'm like, all right, what are you doing with the other 99 books that
no one was interested in?
Yeah. Like, unless you have an outlet for those, you're going to get stuck with all those books, or you're going to either have to sell that 1 out of 100 to make up for all the extra issues that you're selling.
Yeah, and I don't think that I realized that that's how some people were pricing their variants. Some people, right? I think you kind of put me up on that. That some people, if they have these exclusive variants, what they do is they look at the cost of all the regular covers that had to be purchased to qualify for that, and that's how they determine the price of that exclusive ratio variant. I thought that was actually to know that there was a little bit of method behind the madness actually helped me a little bit. That doesn't mean I want to pay for it, but it helps me to understand the methodology.
Right, and of course, you know, different stores have sell different quantities of a book.
Yep.
You know, a book that I sell 10 of, you know, a store in Castro Valley or Fremont can sell 15, 20 of them. So for them, it's a lot easier maybe to get that variant than me, or vice versa. So you have to come up with creative ways. And like I said, at the end of the day, I don't want to lose money on something.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, I want to break even. So if I'm spending another, you know, 20 or 30 bucks to get this variant, then I'm probably going to be selling this book for 30, 40, trying to make at least something off of it.
Yep. I'm actually reading a comment here from Victor, who basically says that he stopped buying modern books and focused on getting more Silver Age keys and even looking into some Golden Age books. And I think that's one of those things that we all kind of have to make our decision on. Where do we want to focus? You know, I still buy even from Juan. I think I have like what 3 books maybe on my pull list that I get from him because there's still modern books that I'm interested in. But my focus is on older books, and I oftentimes hit up his back stock to complete my run and books that I'm looking for. But I do a little bit of both. But I think it's important that we all kind of find that line for ourselves. So Juan, I have a question for you. When you hear about comic shops going out of business, what runs through your mind? Because a lot of people look at their local comic shop going out of business and they think that and Chicken Little, right? The sky is falling, everything is going awry. When you hear about a local comic shop that goes out of business, what's your thought?
Oh no, time to get out.
Sell Regie that AF-15 at like 50% off.
I get sad. I get sad not because I'm like, oh my God, the cow is running out of milk or something. I get sad because first and foremost, I'm a fan.
Yep.
And I don't ever want to see a comic store close. I don't want to see I hated Toys R Us closing. I don't want, like I said earlier, there's enough meat on the bone for everyone. Unfortunately, it comes down to a couple of things. Location. I mean, if you're somewhere in San Francisco, obviously you're not going to survive with the way that rent is.
Brother, it's ridiculous. What was it, Black Cat that just went out of business up there? Or 2 cats or something like that?
Cats, yeah. And that's the first thing. Like, did they close because they weren't making money, or is it because they got forced out?
Yep.
The second is, did they change with the times? Something that I learned a long time ago from Lenny was a comic store sadly cannot survive just on comic books. That's why I have all this other crap in the store aside from comic book.
Yep.
You can't, even a comic store that's been around 30 or 40 years and have, a huge clientele. Your average comic is $2 or $3. That means, or $3 or $4. That means you're only making $1.50 to $2 profit off each of those books.
Can you say that one more time, because someone was asking that question again earlier in the chat? Can you repeat that one more time?
Which part?
The part about what the average cost of a book is and what your profit margin is on that book.
Mostly on books, it's generally anywhere between 35 to 50%. So, just to make the easy math, let's say 50%. So a book that's $4, I'm only making $2. I have to sell a lot of books to make it, to pay my rent, just doing math, I'd have to sell out of almost every weekly book to just pay my rent. That's why you have to have, the toys and the statues and stuff like that. That makes it, and doing conventions, like I said, that always, on slow months, conventions always help.
Yep.
But that's the thing. If a store that's been in business 20, 30, 40 years, started off just by selling comics and never evolved past just selling comics, and you get to this day and age where now their rent is probably 3 or 4 times more than it was when they started, they can't survive. They can't survive. You kind of have to evolve with it. And that's one of the things when I started, no one was really using social media at all. And, 2011, I was 31. I was still, hip to all the stuff, all the cool kids doing the Instagram and all that. And I started blasting, all that on Facebook and Instagram and Facebook groups and all that before I even opened the store, just to get the word of mouth going. And no one at that time was really doing it. And that's the thing. You have to evolve with the times to keep your head above water. If you don't, you're just going to drown. And I think a lot of the stores nowadays, especially the ones that have been around for a really, really long time, is because either they're getting pushed out by landlords, or how much rent is, or they're just not evolving enough to keep up.
Yep. So I heard 3 things in there. I heard about the importance of location and rent, of course, diversification, which lends itself to this third one around changing with the times. Those were the three things that I kind of took away from that answer. There are a couple of people, Rush Die Hard and also Can't Get Enough, that are asking questions around eBay and whether eBay is somewhat detrimental to local comic shops, especially when you can get a book cheaper on eBay than you can from your LCS. Can you talk a little bit about how do you view eBay, right? Do you view it as a villain? Is it a tool and a resource that you use? What are your thoughts?
It's a tool. I mean, it's a tool. Sure, you can find stuff on eBay that's cheaper than your LCS, but you can also find stuff that's way overpriced as well. And you know, walking into a convention, into a store, you have the book in hand. You could check it out for yourself. I could throw up a book on eBay, say it's a 9.8, you know, and then you get it, and the back cover's half ripped off.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a buyer's risk. You know, sure, eBay has stuff in there to get your money back and all that, but at the end of the day, do you really want to go through all that stress?
Yeah.
Is the stress worth it? You know, so eBay is a tool. Sure, you can find stuff, but there's stores that you can go in there and also find stuff too.
Yep. I actually know that there are certain shops that actually have physical locations that also have an online presence. I just bought a She-Hulk #1, a pretty nice copy of She-Hulk #1 backup copy from Koch's in Brooklyn. This is like Koch's warehouse or something like that, physical location, but they also have an online presence as well. And I bought a really inexpensive copy of She-Hulk #1. So I think it's a tool. It is out there for people to use. And I know that Koch's isn't the only place that actually uses eBay for that purpose of extending their reach beyond their physical location in Brooklyn, you know, and it just depends on how you want to access these tools, whether it be social media or the internet as a whole, to someone's point here, Daniel kind of said. So one of my next questions here, and one of my other questions here was around secrets to success. And I think you touched on it with your previous answer around location, diversification, and changing with the time. So I won't worry about that one. One of the other things that people have repeatedly said to me is that they think that the comic book market is going to go digital. People are like, comics will be digital in the future. There will be no print copies of comics. Personally, I don't believe that. But I'm curious what your thoughts are around digital and also around digital piracy of comics. What are your thoughts?
Is it ever going to go 100% digital? I don't think so. People still are going to want their, you know, look at books. Books, yeah, magazines. You know, the print runs might be a lot lower than they were, you know, let's say 10 years ago, 5 years ago, but they're still in print. People are always going to want, you know.
Russ C says floppies rule.
You can't mark up your digital copy of Amazing Fantasy, right?
Bro, no, you can't. It's not the same. I can't even hang that on my wall back there, you know? But no, I have had people that have said that they believe comics will go digital. And based upon the research that I've done, I think the digital space represents about 2%. And by its very nature, comics that are digital can't be collected. It's not the same. It is a tangible,
graded.
Bro, it's a tangible thing. Hey, check it out. I'm gonna show you my whole collection here on my phone, and you're just flipping. That's not exciting. That's not a collection. And I think, to your point, you may see a reduction in print runs, which may or may not be a bad thing. But I think that the physical, tangible nature of a comic inherently makes it something that can't go away in its entirety. And you look at first editions of books that are incredibly popular that aren't going anywhere, coins and all that other tangible collectible stuff. And people are like, well, what about video games? Video games have only just recently become collectible as physical things. And who knows what's going to happen with that. But I think you raised a good point there. The sweet smell of new books.
I mean, it's like, it's even like music. I mean, how long has it been? And records are still a thing. You know, records have had a resurgence in the last couple of years. You know, vinyl.
Digging in the crates.
You know, people use credit cards. I don't think you've ever paid cash once in my store. Does that mean that they're going to stop printing money?
I'm always using my phone.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah,
so
brother.
will print numbers and stuff like that go lower? Yeah, obviously, if the sales dip, the print runs will. But will it be Absolute zero, never.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We already talked a lot about the variant stuff. We dug into that one pretty deeply already. One comment that you made earlier was just, it was around variants being too many as a whole. And you also made comments about how, when creators start issuing their own variants, that you also think that's additive to the reality of there being too many variants. Is there anything else that you would want to add to that, or did we fully capture your thoughts around variants?
I mean, it all falls into I get that artists want to make money too, and it's their side hustle and all that. But when you have an artist every month having 5 or 6 different covers, on their website, it's just too much.
Yeah.
Or and then you have artists that, oh, if you want me to sign this, it's $100. If you want me to sign this, it's $30. It's like your signature is the same on both items, so what the hell's the difference? Why am I paying $70 more for you to sign this than that? To a certain extent, I get it. You want to make the money, but at the same time, I don't know. I guess I have too much of a conscience to ever do something like that.
Yeah.
I'd just be like, look, my signature is this amount for no matter what I sign.
Yep. And like you said earlier, it isn't my job to necessarily knock another person's hustle, right? And their ability to make money. They just won't necessarily make that money from me. Like, who am I to say you're wrong for making your money? It just won't be from my pocket,
Right. And that's the thing. At the end of the day, you choose what covers you want, or what creators, or what company to give your money, or what store to give it, And I think eventually people are just gonna get tired of it, and that's when it'll start, pulling the reins back.
Yeah. The pendulum may swing in the other direction.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about fatigue, right? Because we've touched on fatigue a couple of times during the course of this conversation. There have been 10 years and 20 some odd movies that have been made just in the MCU alone. That is not even including DC and other independents, but 10 years, 20 some odd movies. There are people that believe that the movies and the TV shows that are out there are propping up the comic book market. And there are people that believe that there is such a thing as superhero fatigue, that people will become fatigued with the movies and the TV shows, and they will walk away from them. And to the point that we just made, that pendulum is going to swing back in the other direction. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about TVs and movie shows propping up books? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do you think that there is actual fatigue out there, or that we've only begun to really explore this 80 years of history that exists with comics and the source material? Your thoughts?
There's always going to be fatigue. Eventually, there's always going to be fatigue. You kind of see that right now with Star Wars and their movie franchises. With Marvel, I don't see it getting fatigued anytime soon. And the reason is, if you keep putting up good product, it's not going to matter. The second they start, skipping a beat or something like that, then, the fatigue starts showing. A perfect example is Hellboy. Hellboy is a comic book movie. It really didn't do all that well. Some people said it was a horrible movie. I still have yet to see it, and I'm the type of person that goes to any comic book movie just to support the industry, because that industry makes me money.
Yep, I respect that.
So regardless of the movie or what my thoughts are, I'll go see it. With Hellboy, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder because I love Guillermo del Toro, and I think they did him and Ron Perlman dirty on that, because they've been wanting to make the third Hellboy for the longest time, and they just kind of shut the door on them. And I was just like, just out of principle for my fellow Latino, I'm going to not go watch it. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go watch it to support it. But that's a perfect example that just because it's a comic book movie doesn't mean you're guaranteed money.
Yep. And I think someone down here in the chat actually said it. B3 Chandler says superhero fatigue isn't true. People just don't like crappy products. Look at Star Wars as the perfect example. And you just basically made that same point.
Yeah, I mean, with the Star Wars movie Last Jedi, you have people that hated it and people that loved it, and it divides. And I've always said, the people that hate Star Wars the most are the Star Wars fans, and and I think that's because Star Wars really had. Well, I guess you could say Star Trek is a competition to Star Wars, but not really.
Yeah, because it's a better product. Keep going though.
With Marvel, you have DC, so you're always going to have the DC people bashing the Marvel movies, and you're always going to have the Marvel people bashing the DC movie.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like direct competition there, and there's always going to be a back and forth. But with Star Wars, since there's not that back and forth with anyone really, it just you just kind of turn evil yourself. You kind of turn Sith your own, and you have your Anakin moment where you're a good guy, and then just turn into the bastard that you are.
Yeah.
And like I said, as long as Marvel's doing the right thing and putting them out and doing a good job, there's always going to be a fan bases, and most importantly, it's going to be someone. Like I say with comic books, someone any comic book on the shelf is someone's first comic book.
That's true,
and it's going to open a door. Going back to variant covers, and we were talking about the Captain Marvel that you found.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when DC signed that exclusivity deal with Walmart that they were going to do those 100-page spectaculars.
Yep.
Where it was like 90% reprints and then one original story. And I remember a couple of retailers in this area complaining about it, saying, "Oh, Walmart's going to get into it and it's going to steal customers from me and this and that and blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, no, it's not.
Yep.
Because you got to remember, there's a lot more Walmarts out there than there are comic stores.
Well said.
And someone is going to go in there and see that comic on the shelves at Walmart, pick it up. And since 90% of it is reprints, it's only one issue. Where are they going to go buy the rest of that story?
Yep.
To their local comic book store.
Fingers crossed.
Or online if there isn't one nearby. So giving up one original story, in a trade paperback that's 90% reprints, only helps me, because they're going to pick up that issue. They're going to be like, well, this story is already out. Well, I might as well. Why am I going to wait next month for the next part? I'm going to go buy out the whole book, or I'm going to buy the other issues at the LCS or something.
Yep.
To me, it only helps the stores. It doesn't hurt it.
Let me ask you this, and this is a point that Victor is kind of making here, and I'm going to make it my own. And I've actually made this argument before on the channel. Have you seen the movies and the TV shows drive people to the local comic shops? Have you seen an influx of younger people? Because there is this perception that comics is basically all old men, right? That is the general perception. I remember back in the day, I didn't even think women read comics, and that is completely inaccurate. But I'm curious whether you have seen people that have gone to see a movie or watched a TV show or gone into Walmart to buy that exclusive actually come into the shop.
Oh yeah, I mean, for the first part, yeah, even till now, it's mostly a male-based fan base.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say most people, when I first opened, I was next to an elementary middle school, and they're like, "Oh, that's great. You're going to be making tons of money because you're next to a school." I'm like, first of all, elementary and middle school kids don't have money. But the crap out of their parents, and maybe on their birthday or on the weekend, if they're good, they'll get something. But it's not like a high school. A high school kid has money to spend.
Yep.
So I'd say my clientele is 18 to 45, 50 male, and then some female and almost no kids. The kids that come in here are usually buying toys and not so much comics. Do the TV shows and the movies help? Yeah. Perfect example is when I opened as Walking Dead. It was right when Walking Dead was taking off, And people would come in here and be like, "Oh, I heard that there's comic books based on The Walking Dead." And I'm like, "No, there's a TV show based on the comic book."
Well done.
And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "The Walking Dead's been around for like 10 years." Like, really? I'm like, yeah, it's been around for a while.
I'll sell you that. I'll sell you a number one for $2,000.
You know, and that blew their mind.
Yep.
Like, you know, people still think that a comic book is just superheroes, capes, masks, you know, but isn't, you know, a Walking Dead or a Road to Perdition, or, you know, can be something serious.
Yep.
You know, there was a running joke always with my ex-girlfriend that whenever I would go see her grandparents, her grandfather would be like, "Oh, how's the funny book business?" Because that's what, you know, when he was growing up, it was Archie and stuff like that, you know, tongue-in-cheek books. And, you know, when he started watching the movies and stuff like that, he's like, "Oh, well, I didn't know. I thought everything was just a joke.
Yeah.
They were joke books." I'm like, no, they tackle serious issues, and there's, you know, some realism to it, and things like that. So if a story, if a movie, if a show is good, it drives them in here, because, you know, a season, a TV show is only what, 12 to 20 episodes, and then you have to wait 6 months. A movie, you might only get, you know, a certain type of movie every 3 years or so. But, you know, something like Batman, you got 80 years of comics.
Yeah, man.
You know, you can come here and read 80 years worth of history until the next movie comes out.
Yep.
And the next movie after that. And if a TV show is good, I mean, Spider-Verse, Enter the Spider-Verse. In December or January, even now, people are still coming in and asking me for Miles books because of that movie.
Yep.
So if something's good and it catches people's eye and attention, it drives them in looking for more.
I remember being in the shop once. It was around Christmas, and there was a guy that came in, and he was looking for a Black Panther book, specifically a Black Panther movie book, because he was in there with his wife, black couple, and he wanted to make an ornament for the Christmas tree. And I remember you and I had a conversation. I think you looked at me and you were like, "Did they ever make like a movie version of the comic?" And I was like, "I don't think so." But I remember that, and it was just a guy and his wife randomly in there that were driven to the local comic shop because of the Black Panther movie, and what he's looking for, I don't think existed, which is basically whatever that guy, I can't remember what the guy's name is that starred in it, but they wanted his face, I guess, for the Black Panther ornament that they were making, you know?
And that's the thing, you know, Black Panther helped a lot. You know, Black Panther was one of those things that opened a lot of people's eyes and got people to come in and start buying. You know, I won't lie, Black Panther was not the greatest selling book. It was a decent one.
Yeah.
But the movie pushed it over the edge and made it a way better book.
I have never actually made it all the way through a Black Panther book.
No, not even the new series or anything.
Never even tried to do the one where he was like space based or something like that. I have tried. Like, I struggle with Thor. There are certain books, bro, that I struggle with, and I have owned Black Panther. I own them now. I have never read an entire Black Panther book ever. Nor have I read a Thor. I tried to read the first appearance of the High Evolutionary Thor. The thous, just and I love couldn't do it. So Juan, this has been a really wonderful conversation. Again, this was all about trying to get some insider understanding of the comic book market. And I'm reading some of the comments here, and I think that we achieved what it was that we set out to achieve. And we could probably spend another hour on this conversation, but for the sake of both our personal lives, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. But I'm curious, people that want to learn more about your shop, where can they find you online? Can you run down your social media handles and website and all that good stuff so people can find you?
Yeah, so on Facebook, if you just look up Comic and Figure Addicts. On Instagram, just either the name of the store or CF Addicts is the screen name. And then Twitter, I believe the handle is also CF Addicts. And yeah, that's where we usually post all our stuff, anything new into the shop and stuff like that. That's how you find out what we got coming in.
There you go.
What events we're doing or any conventions we're going to.
What's up for new comic book day? Do you want to give a rundown of what's coming up for that? I think that's what is it next month, right? What's going on?
Yeah. So for Free Comic Book Day, that's the first Saturday in May. So I think that's what, May 4th? Yeah, May 4th, because it falls on May the 4th be with you, Star Wars Day. So this year we're partnering up with the Cartoon Museum in San Francisco, and they're doing a comic shop where you either print out at your own home or you go to one of the participating stores and they give you a passport. And the more comic stores that you visit on that day, the better prizes. Where they're going to have raffles for different tiers. So like if you say, for example, hit up 3 stores, you know, you qualify for the raffles for like the $40 thing. If you do 5, 6, 7, you know, you do the like $60. I think it tops out at like $100 if you go to like 10 or more stores. So the more stores that you go visit on Free Comic Book Day, the more stamps that you collect from those stores qualifies you for the better raffle prizes. Aside from that, for our store personally, we always have local artists set up doing, you know, selling their art, not necessarily just comic art, but just their art in general. We're going to have some other friends that do side businesses selling toys and stuff like that out in the patio selling stuff. We're going to have a raffle of our own for our own customers that come in that day. And of course, you know, free comics, man. And I think we might even have the 501st. I think they said that they were going to send me a couple of those guys down here for Free Comic Book Day.
Very
and
nice.
Tacos. We're going to have some tacos.
There we go. There we go. So Russ, see, we're going to end on this. He basically says, he says, Reggie, you are the GOAT. That, for those that don't know, that is, never mind. Love the channel. And he basically says, thank you to you, Juan, for coming on the channel to share some knowledge. So again, on that note, I do want to say thank you, brother. I absolutely appreciate it. These are the kind of conversations we actually have in the shop while you're taking customers' money, right? But I absolutely love interacting with you and chatting with you. And that's why I wanted you to be on this channel, because you have a perspective that I appreciate. And I think hopefully the audience here appreciated it as well. So brother, thank you very much. I will see you tomorrow. And if you guys need to reach me, feel free to do so at Regie Collects on Instagram and regiecollects@gmail.com. And again, if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, you need to, because this is the type of content that I release every single week. And again, make sure you still tune in to the Ready, Set, Go preview show this coming Sunday at 7:30. We are going to be giving away a cool slab. So hopefully you guys can make it out for that. Thank you very much and have a good night.